My name is Kate. I'm a mother of 5 children, four of whom have special educational needs. One of my children is accommodated under a Section 20, which is a voluntary arrangement between the parent and local authority, due to the trauma they experienced following domestic abuse. I became involved in the family rights group after a chance meeting with Angela and have been a member of the parents panel for the last year. I'm passionate about professionals and families working together collaboratively and parents having their voice heard. I'm proud to introduce you to our next speaker, Sharmila. Sharmila is a mother of 2, now adult boys. She is a working mother who trained as a doctor and was once a GP. She had to adapt her career aspirations due to one of her sons having quite complex needs, which affected every aspect of her life. Therefore, after 16 years of caring for patients, she moved to work in medicines development within the pharmaceutical industry. After 10 years in several different global organisations, she now works more flexibly as a consultant, giving her some precious free time to pursue other interests and tell her story. She has a love of learning, food and trail running, where she combines her enjoyment of being in nature with looking after her mental and physical health. All this while also being a family rights group parents panel member and trustee. She's called her talk, "Can You Hear Me? Are You Listening?"
Thank you, Kate. Soon after I became a parent for the second time, someone asked me what I hoped for my 2 little boys. I thought carefully about whether it was to see them become happy, successful, or just good human beings, and then rejected all of these because those outcomes were so difficult to define. In the end, I landed on my hope being to see each of them fulfill their potential. My youngest son was what some would term a wild child. Toddlerdom brought social challenges which we now understand were triggers for sensory overload and what we observed to be intense and frequent meltdowns. He became unreachable in a kind of mega tantrum. His condition seemed a mystery to even well-trained educationalists. No one thought of autism and sensory overload. He had a diagnosis of ADHD, but that wasn't the full extent of his complex neurodiversity. We didn't understand the full picture until he was 17 and halfway down a road into the criminal justice system, having been excluded multiple times from various schools and then having become disengaged with education entirely. After years of struggling in mainstream schools and being a big extrovert character full of bravado, it seemed John could not help but get into trouble. He just didn't seem to understand the notion that fitting in and conforming, following the rules and being bland was the way to stay under the radar and survive. Then came the draw of making easy money. Having no secondary school place, despite having known special educational needs, he started to get drawn into a bad crowd. They promised him money and riches for moving stuff around. He made a disclosure to an out-of-hours professional at age 13 that he was being made to do this, and if he didn't, he would be beaten up. Yet no safeguarding steps were taken, and I didn't even find out what he was involved in until 2 years later. So a boy who had known only rejection and didactic instruction from school made a choice to make easy money with a new tribe. He hadn't belonged in school, nor in the world so far. Why not follow people who he identified with and who promised him riches and power? They spotted talent, and he quickly got promoted. With his increasing kudos in the local criminal community, he grew more difficult to manage at home. He distanced himself from the family. He felt he could do what he liked. He intimidated us if we challenged him. I felt abused and confused. Should we nurture him or throw him out once he turned 16? I held his vulnerabilities in mind. I tried to remember that he had been a sweet little boy, full of excitement for dressing up and being with friends. He was a charismatic extrovert and a natural playground leader. The teenager in front of me was not someone I recognized, but I had to accept as my own and still a child. However difficult and intimidating he was, I had to keep in mind he was still very emotionally immature. In my eyes, he deserved a chance. By age 17, John was out of control. Multiple agencies were involved, but there was no pathway for a child who had been drawn into being criminally exploited. It was chilling to think that no one could find a way of stopping a teenager in his tracks, and that the unwritten strategy that was being followed was to wait until he turned 18, so he would have had to be dealt with by the police and criminal justice system. For many years, it was like I was shouting for help, and many people from different agencies could see my lips moving, but no one actually stepped in and came up with a coherent plan. Firefighting skills, by contrast, were well honed. Plans for a definitive intervention were suggested, then quickly reneged upon. Risk was not assessed by people with the right level of expertise for such a complex child. I was blamed, challenged at every step. Every misstep of my judgment came back to me like a slap in the face when I read the reports which always detailed them. No parent makes optimal decisions all the time. 2 years on, and the storm has passed. John is a sociable, well-mannered 19-year-old trying to work life out. He has no qualifications, no desire to enter formal education, and no desire to train or get a job at the moment. He won't engage with any help proposed to him by a myriad of well-meaning agencies. They have lost his trust. He cannot allow himself to be helped. I am quietly confident he will be okay in the long run. He is intelligent, polite, socially competent, at least on the surface, and he achieved a successful milestone of learning to drive last year pretty much by himself. He was never a bad child. It was never primarily a behavioural or parenting problem. The challenges of those formative years can be explained by John being wired differently and us not having the keys to unlock the best version of him. It will take years for John and us to recover from the trauma of his childhood and the secondary trauma of feeling so far from any real help for so long. I still hope to see John realise his potential, and it will be all the more poignant knowing what he has had to go through to achieve something. I have learned to appreciate every day that he remains on a healthier path and see every tiny positive as a step in the right direction. Partnership working to me means having empathy for what I am trying to achieve as a parent and helping me maintain my ambitions for my child, especially when there is a strong headwind which I'm having to battle against. Look beyond the obvious and ask questions. Is everything as it seems, or is there a crucial piece, a diagnosis perhaps, missing? Take the long view of the child in the context of his family. Could what you are seeing result from a failure to get a grip on the situation earlier? Try to preempt crises and understand the need to intervene effectively when precious opportunities arise. Before you blame me for my poor parenting skills, walk in my shoes and try to understand what it may be like to live with a teenager who shows extreme antisocial behaviours when reasonable boundaries are defined. It feels like living with an abuser, but the dynamic of the parent-child relationship makes the parent-victim powerless. Understand the challenge of trying to maintain discipline at home, yet realising if the call to police is required, it may criminalise my child when I know he is struggling with the effects of adolescence on his vulnerable brain. The challenge I have right now is how to find a path forward that still might help John to make the most of his unique talents. As I have said, this is my heart's desire. I need help to know what tools are available, and I need to have confidence that working with professionals is going to be better for me and my family than going it alone. I'd now like to share a poem with you, which I wrote as I reflected on my past experience, having come to a period of transition and relative calm as my son turned 19. It's called Kaleidoscope. I see a boy weeping with remorse. You see a boy trying to garner sympathy for what he has done. I see a boy trying his best to sit still, to follow the rules rather than his own ferocious will. You see a fidget, a disruptor, malign, a child seemingly programmed not to stay within the lines. I see a boy whose emotions overflow when the straitjacket of good feels like a stranglehold. You see a child to be handled with care, lest his toxic behaviour seeds a bang and despair. I see a boy with efforts to comply gone awry, who sits confused and alone, wishing he could turn back time. You see a problem excluded from school so that the majority can thrive and make league tables shine. I see a teenager lost in the world, who's in with the wrong crowd and thinks he can dodge the law. I see a youth, angry and lost, with his back to the wall. He is hateful and feels he must win at all costs. You see a menace, hell-bent on crime, a young man without fear who must be stopped in time. I so wanted to help, but love wasn't enough. He needed hope and belonging, not sanctions and cuffs. He is broken inside. He can't find the right tribe. He thinks the world has no space for him and that he should not be alive. He is still a child, a year off 18, deemed mentally unfit to have chosen the mess he now finds himself in. Now turn the lens on the kaleidoscope and watch the beads fall, from visual chaos to beauty and awe. It's time to build a new life from the rubble of the past. So I pick myself up and steel myself to the task. I see a boy wanting to make peace with the world. He needs help, but is tainted from the help that went before.